being able to get a corpus of information that's accurate, that covers the bases, that sort of expresses what's out there in a reasonable way, is very important to be able to render an effective decision. And if somebody has information that they encounter that isn't accurate, the results of that can be that individuals end up making decisions that are now suboptimal. For instance, one inaccurate piece of information that was spread around during this last election was that Pope Francis had endorsed Donald Trump. Right? This was actually a piece of completely fake news, but it was a piece of completely fake news that had the potential to influence a bunch of people who might be interested in who Pope Francis endorsed. Now, on some level, you might think, why would we really care who Pope Francis endorses if we're gathering all the possible information and making a decision? But because people are prone to using heuristics, who the Pope endorses is a pretty good measure of who might be a moral candidate or something like that for a lot of voters. Right? And so if you hear that Pope Francis endorses Donald Trump, that's a strong indicator for a lot of people. That piece of information may cloud somebody's view who otherwise might think about things differently. Even a piece of accurate information can have a big influence on how people think about something. Right? So a classic example of that from this past election as well would be FBI Director Comey's discovery of additional emails relating to the Clinton campaign on the home computer of Andrew Weiner, who was under investigation by the FBI. When this happened, he announced to members of Congress that there was an additional investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails, which made people think that there might be some additional scandal that would emerge or something of that sort. While nothing appeared to come of it, that still has the potential to influence people in substantive ways, right? Those inferences that we make off of even a piece of legitimate information that may be somewhat out of context, as that incident clearly was, can lead us astray in our impressions of what's going on, right? We talk about propaganda as if it's sort of this uniformly negative thing. What governments do is they try to build up the base for what they're doing and undermine what it is that their opponents are doing. The reason people get behind their country members in war is often because of something like propaganda. But a lot of what you'll do in the process of trying to make your own side look good and another side look bad is to spread negative and misinformation about the other side. Right? So if you look at what happened during the Cold War, the impressions of what was going on in Russia and what ordinary Russians were like to Americans was more negative than it ostensibly is now. And vice versa, right? Russia also sent out pretty negative information about the United States and the West. Those people that could access TV on the other side didn't necessarily have quite the same view, which is in part why the West tried so hard to spread its television across as much of Eastern Europe as it could. So what we end up with then is an environment where we have an ideal news consumer or even a suboptimal news consumer. And what can happen as they get and interact with inaccurate information is they come to a point where their views and the way that they start voting, making decisions, etc., can be based on something that's wrong. And that, in turn, can mean that we elect people who aren't necessarily the candidates that will best enact what people want, that people end up saying that they're for a particular thing when, in fact, if they knew more about it, they'd be against it. And those sorts of biases can be hugely pernicious to a democracy that successfully represents what it is that its people want.